Maria in New York City says, what are the wisest investments to make in my early 20s to retire by my early 30s? So you're talking about a really aggressive plan to retire. The first thing,
possible.
Yeah. I mean, TK, tell me what you think here. But I would ask, first I would ask yourself, why do you want to retire by your early 30s? If it's so you can sit at home and play video games, that may not lead to a meaningful life necessarily. It might for you, but quite often what we do, we think of this mythical retirement. Well, I'll just be able to watch my favorite movies of all time. You can do that now. You don't have to retire in order. So
I'll be able to travel when I want.
Right. Ryan and I aren't retired, but maybe we technically are. Like we left the corporate world. We're not retired, but Ryan and I have traveled more in the last decade since leaving the corporate world without retiring than I ever imagined I would travel. 100%. Retirement is not the magic bullet. So ask yourself, why do you want to retire by early 30s? Mm-hmm. And if you have a good answer for that, great. But if it's to rest on your laurels, guess what? You're probably not going to find a whole bunch of satisfaction in doing so.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. So if you want to retire by the time you're 30, here are a few things that you're going to have to do, whether you like it or not. Number one, you're going to have to write down a list of the things that you want to do when you retire. You've got to make a decision, even if you happen to find out that you're wrong in the future. You got to decide where you're going to live. Mm-hmm. You got to decide what kind of lifestyle do you want to have. Do you want to live in a home? Are you okay with living in an apartment when you're 30? Do you want to be married? Do you want to have kids? But TK, I can't make decisions for my 30-year-old self. Well, you're making a decision for your 30-year-old self right now by deciding at 20 that you want to retire. So let's go all the way with it. Where do you want to live? What do you want your lifestyle to be? Because that's what's going to help you get your number. There is no objective number for retirement. You can retire on $450,000. If you want to live a certain way, it might take you $10 million to retire if you demand that you live a certain way. So you've got to get that number. Make a long list of all the dreams and the lifestyle details that you need. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to quantify that in economic terms. That's the first thing. Know what your number is. If you don't know what that is, everything else is meaningless.
And there's a lot of resources out there. Like you can look at retirement calculators. There's many. Chris Hogan has one. I know that in the FIRE community, which Josh brought up on the Minimal episode, there's a lot of resources out there for you to help figure out what that number is.
Yeah. There's this Mike Murdoch quote I really like. He says, prosperity is having enough of God's provisions to complete his instructions for your life. That means one person can be prosperous if they make 6 figures. Another person can be prosperous if they only make $30,000. Are you completing God's instructions for your life? So relative to your individual mission, the definition of wealth is having enough resources to live the life that you get to define as being meaningful. The second thing I would say is if you want to be rich, if you want to get a lot of money, that means you want to get other people to give you a lot of their money. And there's only one proven time-tested way to get human beings to voluntarily reach into their pockets and hand you their money.
It's a Horde hand sanitizer.
And that's buy a whole lot of hand sanitizer.
And surgical masks.
You're going to have to buy a lot of hand sanitizer. The only way to do that is to give them something more valuable. That makes them want to part with that money. So you've got to make an investment in being a student of humanity and getting really good at creating value for other people. And so one thing I would pay attention to is, hey, what are your curiosities and your interests? Because if you're going to be working really hard to create value for a lot of people, you want to make sure you're doing that in a way that you have an advantage and that you're going to enjoy. Because if you're just focused on making a lot of money, you're going to burn out real fast. Because here's the open secret about people. We are really difficult to deal with. And when we give you our money for something, we feel real entitled about it. You know, we talk very differently if you're 5 minutes late to pick us up from the airport, if you're our spouse versus if you're the Uber driver. We got different attitudes about things when we pay money. So if you're going to be dealing with people, you've got a real hard road ahead, and you want to make sure that you're dealing with them in a way that is meaningful for you. So you want to make sure the process of getting that money isn't governed by just the need for money. Pay attention to your curiosities, pay attention to your passions, and go into business in something that you can enjoy. Third, you've got to be better than the average person in order to create the kind of value that's going to help you retire at 30. You're asking for something that is the equivalent of me saying, how do I make it to the NBA? You need to be better than just the average person at playing basketball, right? You're asking me how to make the Hall of Fame of finances. You can do it, but it is the Hall of Fame, and you got to be real about what you're going after. So that means you're going to have to invest significantly in your intelligence. It's not about buying up some stocks right now. It's about buying up some books and reading the heck out of those books and being smarter than just about everybody that you know.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think what I feel like Maria is asking is, hey, what's the next Bitcoin that I can put my money in right now to retire by 30?
Yeah.
And if I had that answer, Maria, like I'd share it with everyone and I'd do it myself.
Right.
But we don't have that answer. The truth is if you're 20, you can retire in your early 30s, but it's going to take a whole hell of a lot of sacrifices right now. I love I love how you brought up the FIRE community in the minimal episode, because there is a whole community out there. Financial independence, retire early. That is what FIRE stands for. There's a documentary out there.
We had Travis Shakespeare on the podcast.
Yes, there are so many resources out there that people talk about doing exactly what Maria wants to do. And what I love about this whole FIRE community is there is no easy answer. There are simple answers, a lot of simple answers, but simple is not easy. And Maria, if you want to retire at 30, you're going to work your ass off. You're gonna dedicate the next 10 years of your life to virtually putting yourself in a poverty situation. In a what do we call it? In a you're restricting yourself. You are temporarily depriving yourself. You're going to put yourself in a situation of depravity in order to get there. But you can do it.
Okay.
Totally do it.
Or here's the simpler solution. Not easy, simpler solution. Redefine what it means to retire.
Yeah.
Because right now, I will often tell people I retired at age 30.
Yeah, me too.
And they're like, oh, were you set financially? No. I still have to do things to make money, but I left the corporate world. And so I redefined what it meant to be retired, meaning I still have to do things to earn a living, but it's no longer about doing the thing that I dislike so I can make enough money to maintain a lifestyle that wasn't even bringing me joy in the first place.